Hello you guys and welcome to today's video. I am particularly excited about today's video because I feel like it is necessary for me. I've been in a little bit of a reading slump for what feels like eternity at this point, and I've been in a little bit of a life slump recently, so I figured this would be a good way to sort of motivate myself out of this reading / life slump, and we are going to be seeing how much I read this week while trying to get out of a book slump. I do feel like it's worth noting that I haven't been in a reading slump because I don't want to read. In fact, I really want to read. I want nothing more than to be able to sit down with a book and love what I'm reading. It just hasn't happened so far this year, I don't think. I actually don't think I've had my first 5-star of the year yet, so I'm hoping that maybe this video will change that. We'll see. Honestly, I can't even say that I'm aiming for a 5-star read. That would be awesome, but at this point I will take a really great 3.5. I will take a 4-star read. I will take anything that just actually makes me want to read. And I would like to think that we're starting off pretty strong because we are reading the new release from an author whom I've come to learn that I really enjoy their writing, and who I also believe got me out of this predicament last year when I didn't have a 5-star read until May or June, and that is This a Cry for Help by Emily Austen. Last year I had 3 like true 5-star reads. One of them was We Could Be Rats by Emily Austen, the other was The Wedding People, and the other was One Golden Summer. So of course I really enjoyed Emily Austen's writing in We Could Be Rats last year. I've also read Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by her as well, and I remember really enjoying that book too. I don't remember that many plot points or scenes specifically because I feel like I read it now maybe 4 years ago at this point, but I do so really remember liking it as I read it, and I think that still counts for something. And going to the library, picking this up, seeing that my hold was ready was actually such an electrifying feeling. I was so excited, and I am so excited, and I think that's already sort of a good way to be starting this video off, because I do think that one good way to at least try to get out of a book slump is either by rereading a book that you've enjoyed in the past, or by reading an author whose writing and work you've enjoyed as well, and that's what we're doing this week. I'm going to start reading now. I'm really excited to go into this. I figured it's also worth mentioning that I'm going into this completely blind. I have no idea what this book is about at all. The title does suggest that there are going to be some sort of mental health struggles, and I'm also saying that because if it's anything like her previous novels, there will be some talks of mental health, and I really love the way that she talks about mental health in her novels, so I'm excited about that. There's also a cat on the cover and many books, so I'm assuming we'll come across a cat and perhaps some books to some capacity. There's also a young woman who seems to be crushed by the weight of the world, the weight of her books. I don't know, but both of them feel equally valid and justifiable, and honestly, I'm already on her side. I'm excited to go into this, and I will let you guys know, of course, what the book is about and any other updates as they come. Oh my gosh. Do you guys remember? Okay, wait. Do you guys remember when we were in elementary school and, I don't know, maybe around 3rd or 4th grade, when we were learning how to write passages and how to introduce paragraphs and how to really hook your reader's attention? Because I can say with 100% certainty that Emily Austen was there for that day of class, and she completely aced that module and that entire block of learning because she always packs a punch so early on in the book that you almost can't even believe it, but you can't look away. You are immediately brought in. You have to know where this is going, because at the very least you have to find out why we are starting off this way, and then of course you are just along for the ride after that. But she always gets my attention so quickly and so easily, especially starting off the book. So I just needed to mention that because I don't know where we're going with this, but I've read the first paragraph and now I'm curious and I need to know more. We are checking in for day 2 of our little how much can I read while getting out of a book slump for a week. I have to say day 1 went very well. I read about 98 pages of This a Cry for Help, and overall I'm really enjoying the story. I mentioned this previously, but I really enjoy Emily Austen's writing. I think she creates very beautiful, raw, emotional, vulnerable, and relatable characters. Sometimes they might even hit a little too close to home. They might be a little bit too real, but I think that just adds to the beauty of her writing and how seen you might feel while reading her stories. In this particular book, we are following Darcy. She is a woman in her early 30s, married to her wife, and she recently just came back from medical leave to her job as a librarian because she got news that one of her ex-boyfriends passed away. She's riddled with a lot of guilt and a lot of grief, and we are kind of watching her go through that, as well as, of course, the other things that are going on in her life. And I feel like that's plenty to know going into this story. Of course, I went into it completely blind and it was perfectly fine. There's no trouble easing into the story. Something that I will mention about Darcy in particular, which I'm finding very interesting, and I don't necessarily remember feeling this or thinking this about other main characters in Emily Austen's previous novels that I've read, read. I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this exactly because I don't want to get it wrong, but it's how her moments of philosophy, if you will, her deep thinking moments are still interrupted by real life moments, or sometimes how her real life moments where she's doing things that feel very mundane are interrupted by these sort of powerful realizations. I'll give you guys an example to better describe what it is that I'm trying to say. So it says, sometimes people talk about humans today as if we're more advanced than everyone in history, but we aren't really individually more advanced. Collectively, because we exist on the shoulders of everyone who came before us, we've developed. We benefit from the information the people before us gathered, applied, and made easier to find. Kyle is purring. I wish I knew what I know now when I was younger. I would have done a lot of things differently. Kyle sneezes. It's sort of this interruption of this moment that she's having, this realization that she's having, this really deep, thoughtful moment by still moments in her real life. And conversely, she'll have moments where she's in real life not really thinking anything too deep, but it'll be interrupted by a moment of deep realization. And I really, really love that. I feel like it's just a very real depiction of how things, feelings, emotions, reflections can come to us. Sometimes they hit us in random moments, and sometimes while we are having these deep reflections, we are sort of distracted or interrupted by something that's going on actually around us. And I don't know, I really, really love that detail. So that's something that I'm really enjoying so far. I do have to say that this was a really good call. Sometimes I think that book slumps can be a good thing when you find the right book to get back into, because I kind of knew going into this that I would at the very least enjoy the writing. Even if I hated every other element of the story, I would enjoy her writing because I've really enjoyed her writing in the past. And because of that, it's made it a lot easier to want to get back into reading. So I'm really happy about this choice. I'm going to keep reading, like I said, and I will give you guys more updates as they come. Alright guys, we are back checking in for how much I can read this week while I'm trying to get out of a book slump. Transparently, I have to say that there has been a break in our week. So just to catch us back up to speed, for day 2, I read 137 pages of Is This a Cry for Help? And day 3, I read 50 more pages of this book, which brought us to the end, and I figured I would give you guys my final thoughts before we get into the rest of day 3. I will start off by saying that I gave this book 3.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it, but there were some things that I didn't love as much, and I just don't think it's going to be a book that leaves a very lasting impression on me, specifically like some of her other novels that I've read. This book definitely has a lot of the elements that I've really enjoyed in Emily Austen's writing previously, specifically the themes regarding mental health, grief, and coming into yourself as a human being. And I think Emily Austen always does a really, really great job of representing those 3 themes and really tying them into the story as a whole. There were also some different ideas that felt much newer to her writing, at least to this extent. I think privacy and censorship are the 2 main newer conversations that this book brings up compared to her previous writing, specifically as they pertain to the content that we consume and that we have available for us to consume. The conversations definitely felt very, very relevant, which I appreciated, but unfortunately I just don't feel like this is going to be one of those books that really leaves a lasting mark on my heart like some of her previous novels have. Something else that was present in the story was this weird little mystery aspect, which I ended up really appreciating, but there definitely was a point in the middle of the story where I was thinking, I don't know exactly why we're focusing so much on this one thing. Turns out it ended up being kind of the one little thread that tied everything up nicely, but it definitely felt a little bit out of place before we saw it all come together. So again, I ended up appreciating it, but at the time while I was reading, I thought, why are we doing this? So while this isn't my favorite Emily Austen, I would definitely say that I still recommend it, and I still really, really enjoyed it. I found her writing to be just as sarcastic and witty and endearing and touching as her previous work has been, and I always really appreciate her specificity and how deeply we get to know her characters, but overall it just wasn't my favorite, and that's okay. The last couple of things that I will mention about this book are, number 1, if I didn't already love and appreciate my local library, I most definitely do now. And that is definitely something that I do really love about reading, is that sometimes we come across different ideas or concepts that we have definitely come across a million times in our daily life, but something about reading them and having them be highlighting them in a book that we're really enjoying will make them feel so much more special. And that definitely happened with the concept or the idea of a library in this book. So much of this book revolves around the library because she is a librarian, so there are a a lot of tenets and things that she believes because of the fact that she's a librarian, and other of her beliefs have only been reinforced by the fact that she works at the library. So that feels very special. And the other thing is that, of course, the setting of the library does come up very often. So now in the last couple of times that I've been at the library, I have come across not any sort of situation that's exactly like the one in this book, but I definitely do think of all of the stories that could come of a library. And the last thing that I will mention about this book is something that I want to incorporate into my reading vlogs moving forward. I love music. Music is a huge part of my life. I love songwriting, and I have always been a huge lover of music overall. And when I read, I either enjoy listening to playlists that have already been curated by other people that pertain to the book that I'm reading, and there is no better feeling than coming across a scene and having a very hyper specific song or lyric really capture and encapsulate that scene that you're reading. I love that feeling. It is like no other, and it is so wonderful when it happens. And sometimes I will be reading without music, and I will still find a way to connect what I'm reading, either if it's a specific scene or the book overall, to songs that I have really loved and enjoyed in the past. And I figured I would introduce that sort of aspect of my reading to my videos. So after every book that I read, I will try to give a song that I think either captures a specific moment, a specific scene, a specific character, or maybe captures and talks about some of the central themes of the book overall. Of course, if you guys ever have any songs that you think would go well with a book other than the one that I mentioned, I would love to hear them. For this book in particular, there were so many moments where the song that would come to mind was Stoned at the Nail Salon by Lorde. In that song, Lorde really talks about being satisfied and enjoying your life, but still holding on to a certain part of the past, and that is something that really comes up in this book as well. That being said, again, if you guys have any other suggestions or any other song recommendations that you think would go well with this book, let me know in the comments. I would be super eager to hear them. Moving on to our next read, we're reading Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. I am very excited for this book because this is the same author of Natural Beauty, and although I haven't read that, it's been on my radar and on my TBR for a very long time now. And I remember coming across the premise of that and reading the synopsis and thinking it was so captivating, so intriguing. It felt very interesting and new, which I appreciated, but I never got around to reading it. And I saw this at the library, the cover caught my attention, and I realized that this is the same author with another very interesting synopsis. So I figured it'd be a perfect time to read this, and I don't have too much to say just yet, but I'm about 20 pages in, like I said, so that brings our total for day 3 to about 70 pages. That being said, we're going to continue with day 4 of the challenge through the very end like we originally planned, and I will give you guys more updates regarding this book specifically as they come. Alright, you guys, I figured it was time for a little day 5 check-in. Starting off with our total pages read for day 4. We read about 25 pages, which is nothing too crazy, but I can say that I am really enjoying the book so far. Still not far enough in to really feel like I know where the story is going. I do feel like we're going to be covering the topic of female obsession, which I'm very excited for because I really do enjoy a story where there is an obsessed woman. Obsessed with what? It doesn't really matter as long as she's obsessed. I really love reading that. And although we haven't dug really deep into that yet, I can kind of see that that's where this is going, which I'm again really excited to read about. I also felt like the dedication was sort of hinting towards that. I really enjoy a sort of cryptic dedication like that, so I really hope that we do dive into this sort of female obsession a little bit. In addition to that, I do feel like one of the driving plot points that we are sort of just starting to develop right now is going to feel very relevant to what we're seeing nowadays with AI especially. So I am curious to see how we elaborate on that a little bit more, and that's really all I have so far. I really, again, I'm not too far into it yet, but I'm very excited to keep reading. I'm going to read a little bit now, and I will give you guys more updates as they come. Guys, we are about to head out to dinner and watch the Knicks game, but I wanted to give you guys our day 5 stats before I left. So we're still reading Immaculate Conception, and yesterday I read a total of 77 pages. I read from page 45 to 122, and I've also read a little bit today. I will say that I am enjoying the book. I do still find the premise very interesting, but at this point in the story, like well over halfway, I would say, I feel like we should be further into the plot, or at least further into the synopsis than we are. We're following our main character Anka, who is obsessed / fascinated by Mathilde, who is a peer at her very prestigious art school that she goes to. Pretty much as soon as they meet, Anka develops this sort of obsession / fascination with Mathilde, and part of it I would say is because Mathilde is a very advanced art student, and by that I mean she gets a lot of recognition and praise from her peers, her professors, and just the general public overall. So far we've mostly been following the ebbs and flows of the relationship over time. What I'm not really loving about the story so far is that it feels very jumpy. I'm currently in part 2, but around the 30 or 40% mark, I felt like, again, we should have been deeper into the story than we actually were. And maybe it's because I did end up reading the synopsis, whereas sometimes I will read a book the entire way through and I won't read the synopsis at all. But I was kind of expecting the synopsis to have already happened by now. At this point, I don't even know if I want to mention what the plot point that I'm looking for is, because it almost feels like a spoiler now over 50% into the book. I am really enjoying the writing, I would say. I just don't know how I feel about the pacing or the story overall. I just feel like at this point in the story, the groundwork and the foundation of the plot should feel a little bit clearer, or at the very least, if there is confusion, it should feel like there's a purpose behind it, and I just don't know if I'm feeling that right now. At first, we were following the sort of then and now dual timeline, and now we've stepped out of that, but we're still following the cycles of their friendship over the years. And it is interesting seeing the dynamic because they do come from very different backgrounds and they are very different people. But at the end of the day, because I did end up reading the synopsis, I'm kind of expecting this thing to happen, and I just don't know if it's going to. And because we're already so deep into the story, I have a feeling that when we finally do cross that bridge, it might just be a little bit too late and it might not be as exciting as I thought it would be. So I'm feeling pretty ambivalent towards the story. I do enjoy the writing, like I said, but the story itself just isn't hitting the way that I thought it would. I'm curious to see how it ends. I will end up finishing the story. I did have a moment there where I thought I was going to DNF it, but I do think I want to see it through, so we're going to see it through, and I will give you guys more updates as they come. Okay, you guys, it is time for our final check-in. For day 6, I ended up reading about 60 pages. I read from page 123 to page 183. And then for day 7, I ended up reading from page 184 to the very end of this book, which was about 100 pages. I also started a third book, but we will get to that after I talk about my final thoughts regarding this one. I know that in my last update regarding this book, I was feeling a little bit ambivalent about it. I unfortunately did not like it that much in the end. I ended up giving it a 2.5 because although I can see why someone else might enjoy this, I personally did not enjoy it very much. Overall, this book has a lot of elements and I personally love reading about. So that includes obsession, control, jealousy, how love may tie into all of these things. It also talks about art and AI and the potential relationship or lack of relationship between art and AI. And overall, like, truly there are so many things about this book that I would have loved or that I did enjoy separately, and that I have read different books that have these themes and I've enjoyed them all separately. I think unfortunately that once we put everything together, we were just trying to do so much that ultimately they all ended up falling a little bit flat. As I mentioned before though, I did really enjoy the writing style, so I would be open to either reading the debut novel that I was interested in previously from this author or some of their future work. But I could totally see why someone else might enjoy this book. I would totally understand someone giving this 5 or 6 stars. It just wasn't for me personally because of the execution. Again, these are topics that I've really enjoyed reading about in the past. I just felt like we did not go deep enough into any of them to the point that it kind of felt like we didn't do anything at all. However, I would give it a try if you are interested at all because again, the writing was wonderful. I just didn't personally love it. So I would recommend it just to give it a try and then see maybe if you like it. Now, if we want to talk about a song that comes to mind when I think of this book, I would definitely say it would be Lacy by Olivia Rodrigo. I think that song just really captures the idea of jealousy and admiration and how they can tie into one another to create a sort of obsession. At times I felt like our two main characters were both Lacy for each other, and that was really interesting to read as a dynamic, and that's kind of how I landed on the song association being Lacy by Olivia Rodrigo. But of course, if you guys have any other song associations, let me know. I would be super eager to hear them. And then the last book that I started in this week was actually one that I have been really eager to read, and that is The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez. And now it's actually been a day or two since our week for this video concluded, but I've still been reading this book and I've been enjoying it so much. I've actually been looking forward to reading it. I am so giddy reading it, and I went into it completely blind, but the trope is definitely not my favorite. It's boyfriend's best friend, which I don't think I've ever read anything like that before, but I am curious to see how we get out of this dynamic and move on to the dynamic that I think is actually going to end up happening. But on day 7, I ended up reading about 52 pages of this book, and again, I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm much deeper into it now, but I am still really enjoying it. So with 100 pages of Immaculate Conception and 52 pages of this, we have a total of 152 pages for day 7. So our total pages read this week was about 619 pages, which feels like a real success, honestly, because again, I was in the worst reading slump before this, and Immaculate Conception did almost put me back into the trenches. I think if I hadn't already been in a book slump, that would have definitely put me into one, but fortunately we were able to avoid that, and our average pages read per day was about 88 pages. I'm very happy to say that I do think that we are finally out of this book slump. Now, unfortunately, we did not get the 5-star read that we were hoping for in this video, but that is okay because I think that we are officially, hopefully, out of the book slump trenches. I haven't finished The Night We Met yet, like I mentioned before, but I do think that is going to be the book that officially gets us out of this book slump. So we're going to announce it, manifest it, and hope that it actually comes true. With that being said, I think that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you in my next video.